As the country burns, all we have is sunshine and beautiful lakes and peace here in Oakland County this morning. Thank goodness. But what a complicated time we're living in. COVID-19, the governor and other people around the state, floods in the central part of the state, still creating havoc and devastation, and then terrible rioting in Grand Rapids over the weekend, and to some extent in Detroit. At the same time, a lot of peaceful protesting going on. So we're going to shift a little bit, pivot, as we say, in the COVID-19 era, and talk a little bit about that today, and continue our mission of covering all that is local with COVID-19 here in Oakland County, in West Bloomfield, in Troy, in Auburn Hills, in Pontiac, in Keagle Harbor, and Bingham Farms, and communities between. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dave Scott along with Tyler Keefe. This is the Megacast for this Monday, June 2nd. And it will continue to replay in some of our stations over the next 24 hours. Thank you very much for joining us. I am broadcasting from our Lakes FM radio studios on Walnut Lake Road in West Bloomfield, and we are delighted to be joined today by 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 WBFH The Biff, and WAHS 89.5 Avondale Community Radio. You can also watch us on television. Now, understand, if you're watching us on television, that we're in our radio studio and we're doing the very best we can to make this a TV show, but this is essentially a radio show on TV. So we thank you in advance for your understanding. But we are on Civic Center TV today. That is Channel 15 on Comcast in West Bloomfield, Orchard Lake, Keagle Harbor, and Sylvan Lake. Good morning to everyone watching on Channel 15 Comcast in the Birmingham area, and that is Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and Franklin on what they call BAMA, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You can also watch us today via the West Bloomfield Township Fire Department's Facebook Live page, and we also invite you to join us on CivicCenterTV.com. We have the video live stream that happens there 24/7. Looks fantastic in high definition, and we hope that you take an opportunity and go there. So, Tyler, I pull up my computer down here just beneath my camera, so forgive me for looking down. And the headline that I read today, 3 days of protests here in Michigan. Here's what happened. This is Click on Detroit. Mostly peaceful protests against police brutality. And the video that the entire country saw of George Floyd pinned down to the ground with an officer and his knee at his neck that resulted in his death was devastating for everybody. And let's start, Tyler, with point A. And point A is that act was universally condemned instantly by everybody. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
There's no reason to take that kind of force on someone in that moment when you already have them detained and they are in your custody. And I think that is, as you said, something that's being accepted by police entities all throughout the United States, because that was completely unnecessary. And
so beyond police entities, politically, everyone has weighed in, regardless of your political persuasion. And we saw some pretty interesting coverage between the major national news cable networks that was very different. You watch Fox, you see one thing. You watch MSNBC, you see a very different thing. But universally, everyone condemned the act. Then we move on to Minneapolis, where the rioting started. And in Minneapolis, it was an interesting, just my observations, it was an interesting strategy, different than we've seen in the past. It seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, did you watch much of the coverage of the weekend?
I watched.
Seemed to me on Friday that the Minneapolis police and maybe the mayor there, whoever was making the decisions, decided to let the protesters attack precinct number 3, let them do their thing, hoping that they would isolate the protests. And I'm talking about the bad protesters, and we'll get into the quote-unquote good and quote-unquote bad protesters here sometime during the show. But it seemed to me their strategy was to isolate the bad protesters in one part of town, let them do what they were going to do, and not get in a confrontation with them. And we've known from previous events that the presence of police with tanks and military-style armaments has been intimidating and maybe creating even more problem than the incident itself. So Minneapolis, Minnesota decided, well, let them do it. And they let them burn down, and not burn down, but they let them burn and severely damage Department number 3, Precinct number 3 in Minnesota, Minneapolis, which was the epicenter of the whole thing. Did you see that? We'll get to comment on it, but did you see that the same way I did?
I didn't see that the same way you saw. I don't believe that was something that was done intentionally. That was a decision done intentionally by the police department. I think that was more of an evacuation for the safety of the officers and the other police officials in that building, and that it just happened to be that with them not being there, there's no one to defend that building and protect that building, and it becomes an easy target.
And that could very well be. So I appreciate, respect your opinion. To me, it just seemed like they didn't want to get in there because it would have taken a tremendous amount of force by the police. So they let that go. And then the question is, what impact did that have on this spreading around the rest of the country? So we're not going to get into the debate over what happened and why. That'll happen on other shows. It's not our job. But I just want to report what we're seeing from a nonpartisan way and let you know what happened. Now, back to Detroit very quickly, and then we're going to get to our guests. But if you don't mind, I'm going to read briefly from this story and click on Detroit because it does a pretty good job of summarizing what happened here. And then we're going to talk with the chief of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, Greg Flynn, and just talk about some structural things as to how these kind of events might be handled. But from Click on Detroit, thousands took to the streets in Michigan over the weekend to protest police brutality following the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis last week. Protests began after the May 25th death of George Floyd, a black man who died in Minneapolis after a white police officer who is now charged with murder pressed his knee into Floyd's neck. We saw that. Protests are organized in dozens of cities across America, were mostly peaceful and calling for the end to racial injustice. Of course, some devolved into riots with looting, vandalism, and arson. And there's a really good recap of what happened day over day here in Click on Detroit if you weren't watching all the events. From a purely Michigan perspective, Detroit curfew seemed to work really well yesterday. There was some action taken, but from what I saw, Tyler, the Detroit Police Force and Mayor Duggan did an amazing job yesterday managing things in Detroit.
I think by and large in Detroit that the protesters were also very much cooperative with the police presence as well. As you said, in many of these cities, these protests began peacefully and then devolved into riots as more people came in and people with bad intentions came in as well. In Detroit's case, I believe that the protesters set their goal and they stuck to it and cooperated with the police who were cooperating with them and allowed this to remain peaceful, especially on Sunday night.
And just two quick comments about other things that happened around the state. And I'll just relay it anecdotally because I don't have the stories in front of me at this hour. But Grand Rapids, they had a real problem in Grand Rapids. Protests really got out of hand there, and there was significant damage in downtown Grand Rapids over the weekend. And then maybe the most beautiful story that happened anywhere in the state, and I think maybe if you're looking for some good news, just look to the, I think it was a Genesee County Sheriff up in Flint, who was in the middle of what was a situation that was hot, getting hotter by the second. And this brilliant law enforcement officer took off at great risk, took off all of his protective gear and went over and talked to the protesters, and they worked it out. And, and that video is going viral, and I can't think of a better video. I almost want to cry. I can't think of a better video to go viral on this Monday. And if you're looking to feel a little bit better about where we are at this very difficult time, just look to Flint, Michigan.
I would agree 100%. I think that is an incredible first step. That in no way, shape, or form solves the issue, but it's an incredible first step. It's a profound first step, and it was beautiful to see that happen in Genesee County. And I think that if more people across the country will take steps like that, say, look, I'm listening, I'm here, and I want to start this conversation, that's the exact first step that we all need to take to solve the issue at hand.
Here on our show today, we're going to be checking in just a second with the chief of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, Greg Flynn. We'll talk coronavirus, and we'll talk the news of the weekend. Bill Anderson, Finance and Operations Specialist, Southeastern Michigan Council of Government, SEMCOG, will check in originally to talk about coronavirus, but I think we'll dance around that and some other subjects as well, obviously, in this Monday. We're going to talk to Chief of the West Bloomfield Police Department. A lot of West Bloomfield today, but it relates to our entire coverage area, and after all, this is where the show started. And we have a great relationship with the Chief of Police, Mike Patton, in West Bloomfield, who I'm sure will have some very interesting thoughts for us as he's been working hard to protect his community, and I'm sure going through exactly what all the other chiefs in our area have been going through over the weekend. And then we're going to be talking to the mayor of Pontiac, Mayor Deirdre Waterman, who we talked to a couple of weeks ago on different matters, and we'll see how things are going in Pontiac. I haven't really checked all the news accounts, Tyler, but I think it was a pretty peaceful weekend in Pontiac from what I can see.
I didn't see any information regarding any protests or any incidents from Pontiac, and I would say in these times that we're currently in, no news is good news.
Well, there was a press conference Sunday at City Hall, and we'll talk to the mayor about that. I know Dave Coulter, county executive, was there, so we'll find out more about that later on in the show. So that's what we have today. Still a lot of COVID-19 coverage, but it would be reckless of us not to talk about the news of the day, so we will. And to give us a helping hand in that regard, it is a pleasure to be joined via Zoom by the chief of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, Chief Greg Flynn. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Dave. Good morning, Tyler.
So where are you? Just give us a tour of what's behind you. And it looks very fire department-y there in your shot, but what do we have?
Well, I'm here at Fire Station 5 today, and where we were setting up this shot, the crews were all out, so I had an empty apparatus room, and so I thought I'd give you a shot. This is behind me is the gear room, so where the firefighters store their gear while they're off duty, and then clearly you see some empty bins behind me because those are the firefighters that are on duty, so their gear's on the trucks.
All right. Well, let's get out of the way the business at hand today that we have to talk about. And Tyler and I were talking a little bit about what happened at Police Precinct Number 3 in Minneapolis. What kind of a challenge on Friday night? We didn't see the fire department. The building unfortunately had to burn. What kind of challenges do you think the firefighters faced there? Not only trying to put a fire out, but also dealing with everything else that was going on that scene.
Sure, we've talked for the past few weeks about this virus that we can't quite track down, and we've really made some good progress on that. And now, as a community, as a nation, really, quite frankly, I think the news has shown us, even as a global issue, we're dealing with some very challenging discussions, and that leads us to these acts. Some of them, and I want to be very careful and respectful here, Dave. This is not an area that that as a fire chief, I want to be respectful of every word that I choose or how I frame things, because this is such a volatile issue.
Well, let me help you. Let me help you then, Chief Flynn. So let me help you. Let's just talk about firefighting. Let's not talk about, because believe me, it's tempting to get into the other stuff, but let's just talk about firefighting for a couple of minutes and keep it simple. So, can you imagine what it would be like to have to bring a crew? You get a call from 911, and you have to bring a bunch of fire trucks to a West Bloomfield Police Department precinct. It's surrounded by protesters, and the area isn't safe and secure. I know you probably never get that call, but just what do you think the fire department, would be thinking on a day like that?
That definitely presents a challenge, like you highlighted there, that we are not we don't have a lot of experience in that. But I can tell you that those firefighters, their first concern was protecting. And they wanted to protect that structure there in Minneapolis. They want to protect the protesters. They want to protect each other. That's just what is in their makeup. We're a helping profession. We're public servants. And what we're trying to navigate right now is an area that there are some that are using their rights to protest, and then there are others that are being hurtful. And I think those being mixed in there make it very challenging that if I was a company officer rolling up on that scene trying to differentiate on the who's who, it makes that my first priority so that we're safe to tactically address and mitigate the fire that we are approaching. I've got to make sure my team is safe in order for them to mitigate the hazard that we're there to address. So this really puts a two-front focus for that company officer in that initial size up of that scene. And that tactically is very challenging, Dave, looking in two different directions at two equally important hazards.
Well, Greg Flynn, chief of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, every big major fire scene. Now, we're talking that the precinct number 3 Minneapolis that burnt on Friday, and there was no fire response there on scene that we could see on TV. Typically when there's a major fire, that was a major structure fire. Typically, if there was a major fire structure fire here in West Bloomfield or in Oakland County, the police would shut down the roads. They would isolate the areas. Don't you need room and safety to work and put your hoses out and kind of spread out on the scene so you can get your work done without, just even risking the safety of people in close proximity to you in a normal situation?
Sure, and that we've described our fire trucks as large toolboxes. That's really what they are. They roll onto the scene and they have every tool that we can think of to gain access to a building, to ladder a building, to everything we need to do to get to where that fire is. So if that fire truck isn't secure where we're going, then that puts all of the tools that our firefighters need at risk as well. So that presents a challenge. So that's when those police officers are shutting down streets and restricting access to where those fire trucks are. That's why, and we do that on an everyday basis just within our communities here. When those doors are open, stuff can fall out and onto the floor, or onto the surrounding around the fire truck. So, again, your questions are fair. The real concern is that it's hard to ever know exactly what those company officers and what that incident commander, the whole public safety team there was going through. Because I am certain that they were addressing that and looking at and doing a risk threat analysis as to what their tactics were going to be with that.
Well, and then just a pure firefighting question. So you got a major structure like that. You can bring all the gear, but you need water to put the fire out, don't you? So we saw, and it wasn't just that scene. I saw a lot of scenes on TV over the weekend, and I was so looking forward to talking to you this morning because I saw all these scenes, and you need water to put out a fire, and the water isn't always right at the fire. So you got protesters, and you don't have access to the water that you need to put out a car fire or a structure fire. What do you do? And do you always need water, or can fire departments carry enough water for a structure fire with them?
So most fire engines, so an engine pumper, the ones that have a pump on it, typically carry a reserve tank full of water. Now that tank can be as many as 250 to maybe 700 gallons, depending on the size of the truck. We use that water, Dave, for what's called the initial attack. And so while the initial hose is deployed by our initial attack crew, then that provides the engine crew time to secure a water supply. And by the time the tank water is running out, you're now bringing in the water from the fire hydrant. And so that's actually a drill that we practiced, that the engine crew has to, what we call tag a hydrant. They start flowing water, and that engineer needs to wrap the hydrant, dress it, get a water supply, bleed it, and restore water to the engine before they run out of tank water. We drill on that. So you're correct. We have a little bit of water. That's just to buy us time to get to that hydrant. And that's why we're always asking people to clean away from hydrants in the snow in the wintertime, or not to park next to them, because seconds do really count there. And that's why we want to have that open access. But you're absolutely right. We need water.
Well, and the point I'm getting to here is in watching the coverage, and it's hard to just make the assumption that law enforcement, the elected officials, and the fire departments are doing this, that, or the other because of political reasons or because of decisions about how to manage a crowd. It might just come down to basic firefighting. And then another scene, I don't know if you saw it last night on TV late, but Washington, D.C., I mean, literally, within a mile of the White House, actually closer, there was a park right in front of the White House with a building on fire. And they couldn't get the fire crew in there until the park police got the protesters out of the area. So it just seems to me, Greg Flynn, chief of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, you can't fight a fire structure, with a protest going on right there. You got to get your hoses and you got to get set up. Is that a correct assumption?
It is, and what's challenging about this conversation, Dave, is, and I think you might even sense this today as you interview other public safety officials, when we talk too much about the strategies, one of our biggest fears is when I, for example, say too much about kind of our operation, it can sometimes invite those that want to provide harm or cause more confusion, vulnerable spots. Now, we're aware of these things. So, I mean, again, I don't have any problems with any of the questions, but we start to get hesitant because we are normally working in environments where people are glad to see us, where residents are coming out, clearing things out of our way. They're helping mitigate the situation. And the situations you're describing are situations where there may be a few in that group that are out to sabotage or make things more challenging for the first responders. And that's a very delicate balance that all of us in appointed and government positions want to be very respectful, because we are here to serve the public. And that's really a big part of this big community dialogue that's going on right now, is about some of the authority and the things that happen with your trust in government.
Well, Greg Flynn, we thought it was going to be complicated talking about washing our hands and whether to wear a mask or not. Look what we have in front of us today. And thank you and I realize you can't answer everything I'm throwing at you, but thank you for having the dialogue. It really helps. And, I just trying to help people understand what they're seeing on TV and why these things are going on, and the fact that the national media may not give you an entirely clear picture. That's the whole purpose of the show, is to talk to people like you on the front line and try to get to the bottom line of things. So back here at home in Oakland County, and I know there have been a lot of late nights for police, elected officials, fire, and other first responders, even though you've not had to be out. You and your colleagues and the other amazing people in Oakland County and West Bloomfield have not had to be out responding to the kinds of things we've been seeing around the country. But that doesn't mean that we haven't been ready. Is that correct?
Our jobs, Chief Patton's job is on the legal side and the law enforcement. My side is kind of that community risk reduction. We partner together, and this is replicated at our friends to the south in Farmington Hills, or over in northern Oakland County. Anywhere you go, this is how the system works. And so our job is, when times are good, we think about what if times weren't good. And so we're prepared for these types of things. It just so happened, Dave, that our training schedule for this week is our rapid intervention teams, or our task force teams for active assailant type situations. So we just received earlier this year over $30,000 worth of ballistic vests and helmets and gear for our paramedics. Now, I wouldn't have thought 2 decades ago, when I started at the WBFD, that we would even contemplate wearing a ballistic vest. So you're on point with, hey, 12 weeks ago, I think, when we did our first special coronavirus, breaking news kind of interview, who would have thought that we would be here today? But that's what your public safety officials do. They I think you said they pivot very quickly to whatever is coming their way. And I think you're going to find that it's very insightful from Chief Patton today, that his team is briefing on this. They're ready for this. And they hope that none of it happens. But hope isn't a strategy, so they plan. And they come up with real tactical things that they're going to be able to do. And the FD will be there to support their efforts should they be called upon.
Chief Greg Flynn, West Bloomfield Fire Department, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate you being here. Before we say so long, let's do a little bit of quick coronavirus update. I'll give you a chance to say, make sure you wash your hands, make sure you do social distancing, make sure you wear your mask. Other than the general reminders that we continue to make, any updates on the coronavirus front today?
So folks, I think, are really quick to navigate to where they can get the information now, and they can see all the numbers and update. What I'd like to take in the last few seconds that I have with you guys is to start talking about that second wave. And when people start to get a little focused on that and the negativity of it, I want them to refocus on what is going to be different about the second wave than this initial or first wave. We understand the disease. We understand the mitigation that we can take place. We have our masks. The hospitals, the first responders, everybody, they're increasing their PPE. We are going to be ready for the second wave. Our businesses are ready for the second wave. The supply chains will be ready for the second wave. So when the naysayers come out and try to want to paint some doom and gloom coming for this fall, as we so often, and I want to, again, highlight what you and Tyler are doing too as well, because you are part of that front line, because information is knowledge, knowledge is power, and we want our community to feel empowered and knowledgeable, and that's what you guys are making that connection with these professionals you bring on and connecting them with the public. Well, we are going to be in a good place, and our community is going to be in a good place because they're informed, and I think that's the big takeaway to start as we relax things a bit, because they are. You can see that in the footage that you're seeing on the news, and it's going to continue. But let's not dwell on that too much, because people are still washing their hands more and being smart about how they're doing this. But human beings are going to become within 6 feet of each other. Otherwise, we're not going to be around for very long, Dave.
No, they are, and let's be honest, it's starting to happen. It was another nice weekend here in Metro Detroit, a little cool, but a lot of people got out. People are getting closer together. More businesses are beginning to open up. We expect to hear from the governor on the 12th or sometime before that we're going to continue to open up. More people are going back to work. Streets are a little bit more crowded. So what you're suggesting, Greg Flynn, is in fact happening. And even though we saw a really difficult weekend, what I continue to see is the amazing people, a vast majority, an overwhelming majority, dealing with this in a very, very community-minded way. We salute everyone tuning in today and all the other people that are just doing a great job. And Greg, I have confidence that people, as we continue to open up our communities, are going to do a good job, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that next wave is not too big and that we are ready to deal with it. And I'm glad you're getting prepared. Thank you very much. Anything else to add today?
You're welcome. Thanks for what you guys are doing. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, very good. He is the chief of the West Bloomfield Fire Department, Chief Greg Flynn. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a couple of moments, and we're going to check in with the Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, Bill Anderson, who we booked late last week to talk about the financial challenges communities are going to be having. We'll be checking in a couple of minutes, and maybe he'll have some additional perspective on the news of the day. We'll be right back. I'm Dave Scott. He's Tyler Keefe. This is Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, Lakes FM, the BIF, WBFH in the Bloomfield Hills area, 89.5 Avondale Community Radio. Thank you for watching on CivicCenterTV.com, and we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Caldoun. We know that COVID-19 is spreading rapidly across Michigan right now. The most important thing people can do to protect themselves is social distancing. That means unless you are a critical infrastructure worker or going out to get food or medicine for your home, you should be staying at home. Stay home, stay safe, save lives.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Park's COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
That is our goal, to stay safe during these difficult times. All the work that you're doing to make that happen is greatly appreciated. In fact, I like when I'm walking around, just go up to somebody wearing a mask at the grocery store and just say, hey, good job, and try to do my best to do all the right things. I know you are, Tyler, and everyone who listens to this show. Wash your hands, stay safe, keep your social distancing, and we will get through it even during a complicated Monday like today. I'm Dave Scott, Tyler Keefe, in our West Bloomfield-based studios for Lakes FM and Civic Center TV. We're across 3 radio stations in Oakland County: 89.3 WBLD, 88.1 WBFH, 89.5 WAHS. We're also on a number of television channels. You can tune in across most of Oakland County and Channel 15 and see us. If you can't see us there, go over to AT&T and click on Channel 99, or go to the West Bloomfield Township Fire Department Facebook page. We are there, streaming live, and CivicCenterTV.com, where you can also visit our coronavirus page and look for all of our other social media outlets. It's really amazing. Sorry to do that so fast. There's just a lot, and I want to get it out of the way every time. It's amazing what we can do, Tyler, with social media right now and build a big network to reach a big chunk of Oakland County through all these tools. So greatly appreciated. You're doing a good job making it work every day. Everything's working today?
Yeah, everything's working really well today.
All right, a lot of buttons and dials. This guy helps things work real well around our region. Bill Anderson joins us, Finance and Operations Specialist with the Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, otherwise known as SEMCOG, and he checks in now via Zoom. Mr. Anderson, welcome to the Megacast.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, good being with you. It is a complicated day. Maybe we'll give you a chance to chime in on the news of the day, but let's come back to that after we get to what we wanted to talk to you about today, and it is a huge problem for our municipalities. Revenue is going to be down possibly from the tax revenue from property tax, sales tax, and revenue sharing from the state of Michigan also is likely going to be reduced. This is going to have a huge impact on our local municipalities and our schools. What can you tell us about that, Bill?
Yeah, I'm going to assume most people have heard that the state is running a $2 billion deficit for the current fiscal year under the state general fund, as well as another $1 billion deficit in the school aid fund. But those are only part of the issue. For instance, for local units of government, one of the largest revenue sources is something called revenue sharing, which is derived from the state sales tax. So when sales went through the floor, when everybody went to staying home and staying safe in mid-March, sales tax revenues in the state just took a huge nosedive. And many of our communities now are going to be looking at probably about a 10% reduction in their state revenue sharing that's derived from the Constitution of our state. But there's other areas that are being hit as well. When we stopped driving, we saw during the height of the stay home order where traffic volumes were down 75% within our region, the gasoline tax went through the floor as well. So now we're looking at a scenario where not only the state's going to see about $100 million less to take care of the roads, but our county road agency is going to be seeing about $100 million less, and our cities will be seeing a decline of about $50 million this year. So there are many different ways where revenues are really tanking, and I guess it's just a lot like all the homeowners. And when you're sitting at home, you're worried about how you're going to keep things going.
Bill Anderson is joining us, Finance and Operations Specialist, Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, joining us here on the Megacast. You know, Bill, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but you throw these billions out, and in this era where we keep hearing about the federal government throwing out trillions, I can't help but thinking, billion here, billion there, what's a big deal? But I'm glad you're cracking up about it, because it's ridiculous, really. But maybe you could help us put it in context. So the 10% thing happened, or helped, but what do these billions really mean? I mean, how much impact are we the folks watching and listening right now, are they going to feel this?
You know, what I'm going to say is that local government officials do everything they can to make sure you don't feel it. But the probably the biggest challenge right now is for our schools. When you have a $1 billion deficit, schools' fiscal year end in 4 weeks. How do you cut $1 billion out of a budget over the course of 4 weeks? You can't do that. So that's probably the most critical issue. And we have all these laws that say you can't operate in the deficit. So we're putting virtually every school district in the state pretty much in a situation where they may be in a deficit.
So, Bill, let me interrupt for just a second, because just structurally, and I don't want to stay out of the weeds here, but what you said just opened my eyes to something I hadn't thought about before, and that is all of this is going to impact this year's budget, and then there's next year's budget. I assume the fiscal year for most school districts breaks in the summertime, and they end a fiscal and start a new fiscal sometime during the summer. A, is that right? And B, are they losing dollars now and will lose dollars in the fall? Because I was just thinking about the money they're going to lose next year. I didn't think about this year.
School finances are extremely complicated since Proposal A passed. But yes, schools, all the school districts in the state end their fiscal year on June 30th and begin the new fiscal year on July 1st. And so when I say that the state doesn't have enough money to make the payments that they promised to the schools last July, there's no time for a school district to correct their budget because there's only 4 weeks left to correct their budget. So they just have to absorb that loss. If it is passed on to the school districts, they just have to absorb that. Now, part of it might be coming out of a fund balance if they have some, but in many cases, the school districts don't have enough money to do that.
Bill Anderson, Bill Anderson, I want to just Finance and Operations Specialist, Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments. You keep saying things that I hadn't thought about. I'm really glad you're here with us today. So are you telling me that the state because the schools, they're told at the beginning of the year, after they do their count, here's how much money you're going to get from the state. Are you telling me the state might renege on that promise, so that is still possible before the school year is over?
Well, right now, nobody figured that we were going to see such a great, huge reduction in revenue as quickly as it's come on. Of course, everybody started figuring it mid-March. But it's a very real possibility. And the governor basically what she wants to do is the state of Michigan received about $3 billion from the federal government under the CARES Act. But that money could only be used for new expenses related to the COVID-19 outbreak and couldn't be used to offset reduced revenues. And I think all of the governors across the country want to make use of that money to make up for lost revenues. And I would strongly guess that if the federal government gave that permission, the first thing they would do would be to make the schools whole.
Yeah, well, past governors have done a really good job of saying, well, we're not going to adjust this money, and then they use this money. I think of the Michigan lottery in the schools, but I don't want to get... So, they're pretty good at saying...
I've written papers on that.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe they could figure out a way to manage their budgets in such a way to let them comply. I didn't even think about the possibility of schools not having money this year. Okay, thank you for that. I'm even more worried for our schools now. I wish them the best of luck. And if you're concerned about this as well, good time to pick up your phone or email your senators here in Michigan and your members of Congress. And if you want to send a tweet to the White House, you could do that as well. Wouldn't hurt at all to let them know that our local municipalities really do need help, and it's not I don't want to get political, so I'm not going to go where I was going to go. So, Bill, let's talk about our municipalities. We talked about schools, talk about municipalities. I've actually had conversations with some of the municipalities, and we're blessed to have some of the wealthiest communities in the country right here in our service area. And some of them said they have some fund balances, but that's not the case in every community. What are they going to do?
Yeah, and one of the challenges for them, the schools, it's like going to happen in one fell swoop. For our local units of government, it's going to, I characterize it as waves of issues coming at them. The first one is having to close down and cutting off revenues from programs that they might be operating. Some of them rent out buildings, recreation programs, those kinds of things. Then the second wave was these automatic payments from the state, like constitutional revenue sharing and Public Act 51 for roads, those going down. Now the state is going to have to make that $2 billion budget cut for this fiscal year and another $2 billion in the next fiscal year. Everybody knows that there's going to be programs, whether it be in the cities, townships, or the counties, that programs are going to get cut there. And then we start wondering about property taxes. And some of your listeners might be interested in the fact that the legislature is looking at whether people who've been financially distressed due to the outbreak might be able to put off paying their property taxes. And that can be very important to homeowners and businesses, but at the same time, it can significantly impact cash flow going to local units of government. So we're trying to balance all that out to make sure that the local units of government still get those property tax revenues coming in while still giving a break to those who need it. And then there's the question, does the COVID-19 outbreak start impacting property values to the point where property taxes start going down? And most of our local governments are still trying to get over what happened during the Great Recession, a decade ago, because many of them are still operating on budgets smaller than they were 12 years ago.
Bill Anderson, lots of interesting thought today. I really appreciate you joining us. He is a finance and operations specialist from the Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, SEMCOG, joining us here today. And Bill, boy, we got a quagmire. I think most people are crossing their fingers and hoping the federal government will come in and bail out our municipalities. If you listen to the president, he said he doesn't want to bail out. Again, I'm just going to quote him as closely as I can without notes in front of me. Said he doesn't want to bail out states that have not managed their own budgets well. So, a little bit of an indication of what he's thinking. The CARES Act went through pretty quick, but it's getting a little more complicated to get legislation to continue to come out of Washington. And I don't think the events of the past weekend are going to help that at all. So, we will keep watching. I hope we can have you back on the show. I really appreciate your expertise. Two final questions. A, people that don't know, what does Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments do? What is your purpose in life?
We are the regional planning organization for the 7 counties of Southeast Michigan. We are the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, and we work in the Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Livingston, Washtenaw, Monroe, and St. Clair County area. We are the agency that has to approve all road projects that involve federal funding within those 7 counties. We look at air quality and water quality issues. We deal with economic development issues within the 7 counties. So we are made up of local governments, cities, villages, townships, counties, intermediate school districts, community colleges are all members of some kind.
And Bill, at the top of your agenda over the past several years has always been regional transportation. That's one thing that is on your agenda. You just mentioned it. And, you know, I'll tell you what, the governor is going to have her hands full now because, yes, we're hoping for money from the federal government, but not only does she need to fix the damn road, she's got to fix the damn dams, too. So, I mean, it's really a quagmire here with everything else going on in the state. We'll see how it all goes. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Finally, before we say so long, do you have, and we don't want to get into anything political, do you have anything structural or anything helpful that you want to share with us, seeing as we have you here, about the events of the past weekend?
Oh, you know, I was listening to the past interview, and, you know, you hate to think of sending a fire person into a middle of a huge crowd to put out a fire where people may or may not want you to put it out. You pray that everybody can get out there, make their opinion heard, but at the same point, you know, that we respect each other while we do that. And I think that's the important issue for us all, to listen to each other and respect what the other person has to say, take it to heart, and maybe we can get through this.
Well, I well said. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you for that answer. Bill, I appreciate you joining us. And just before we say so long, on that note, I'll tell you what, there was some disruption in Detroit over the weekend, but, you know, for those of us that lived through 1968 here in Michigan, I'm pretty darn proud of our community right now and the way things have, and I'm talking about our regional community, the way things have transpired here. It certainly wasn't a perfect weekend, but all in all, a lot of good work by a lot of people on all sides of the issue to keep things safe. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. He is Bill Anderson, the Finance and Operations Specialist from the Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments. And Bill, will have you on the air again down the road. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Our Erica Jones is in the field today. She is headed over to the West Bloomfield Township offices, and we're going to see how things are going there. Now, most of the municipal offices in our regions have not opened. I don't think any of them have opened, but many of them now have their staff back on site. That's the case in West Bloomfield. We'll check in with Erica in just a moment. You're watching the Megacast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Faust, the Medical Director for the Oakland County Health Division. The most important thing you can do to prevent the spread of illness is to wash your hands thoroughly and often. Follow these 6 easy steps every time you wash your hands. Step 1, turn on the sink and wet your hands with warm water. Step 2, apply soap to your hands and lather between your fingers, under your nails, and the front and back of your hands and wrists. Step 3, wash your hands by scrubbing them together for at least 20 seconds. Step 4, rinse your hands with warm, clean water. And step 5, dry your hands with a clean cloth towel, a paper towel, or hot air blow dryer. If you're using a cloth towel, make sure to change it often. For handheld faucets, turn off the water using a paper towel instead of your bare hand. Step 6, if you're using a paper towel, throw it away. Practice healthy habits like washing your hands after coughing or sneezing into them to keep you and others healthy. Go to oakgov.com/health or call Nurse on Call at 1-800-848-5533 to learn more.
Good morning and welcome back, Megacast. Dave Scott, good to be with you. Tyler Keefe here in our studio. Doesn't look like it because these cameras are kind of like the cameras on a drone. They've got these really wide-angle lenses because they're working in a radio studio. But he is, in fact, we've measured it. He is, in fact, 6 feet away, maybe even more. So as long as you stay on your side of the studio.
I don't cross over.
Okay. Have we marked the line like they do at the retail establishments?
There's an imaginary line there, and I've got it programmed in my brain.
All right.
Not to cross it.
All right. Thank you. Be careful. Thank you for joining us across 3 great radio stations. Lakes FM 89.3 in the West Bloomfield general area, 88.1 WBFH, the Biff in the Bloomfield Hills general area, and 89.5 Avondale Community Radio in the Auburn Hills general area, and covering an awful lot of Oakland and Macomb County. We're on Channel 15 on many of your local cable outlets. Channel 99 AT&T, you can watch us anywhere across Metro Detroit. Go to one of the community channels. Just pick West Bloomfield, for example, and you'll be able to see our show. Go to CivicCenterTV.com if you're driving around in your car and you get home, and you can watch on CivicCenterTV.com. And today, we are on the Facebook Live channel for the West Bloomfield Fire Department. So a lot of our municipalities, they got a headache, as you just heard from Bill Anderson at SEMCOG, just dealing with financial issues. School situation, Tyler, I didn't think about the challenges schools are going to have, not only in the upcoming fiscal year, but this fiscal year still running. They may not get the money they were expecting.
Yeah, it's definitely a big struggle for them. Just watching the recent West Bloomfield School District meeting and their discussions on Oakland Schools' budget and how that's affecting them, because it is kind of a chain of these budgets. It's a really tough situation that they're desperately trying to work through in those 4 weeks they have left.
All right. Certainly a lot of protests over the weekend after the death of George Floyd. We'll continue to talk about that throughout the morning. But right now, let's head out to the West Bloomfield Township Hall, where our own Erica Jones is. And employees are back in the building, Erica. The doors are not open to the public. Tell us what's going on there.
Hi, yeah. So like you said, I am at the West Bloomfield Town Hall currently. I'm standing in the middle so we can see all that's going on. All the employees, very bright here. They got all the windows on the ceiling and everything. But all the employees are back at work, so it's really nice to see, people working hard. They're very eager for the public to be able to come back in. But you can see here we have all the different departments. So water utilities is right here. They're inside there. I don't know if you can see, working hard. Then if you come over here, we have assessing. They're inside there working. So pretty much everyone's sitting at their desks, masked up, and back to work as normal, just without the public being able to come in quite yet. But they are very eager.
And it won't be long in those protectors that are keeping the public from interacting, those fences or whatever they are, that are at the counters. Those will be lifted. The doors will be unlocked.
Yes.
And we'll get back to business, not only in West Bloomfield, but in all the communities. And if you walk down a little bit, just keep walking down the hall back by those bright lights, you'll see the boardroom and the other areas there where we hold our municipal meetings. So we can take a look and see what's going on there. But certainly no one to talk to because everyone's at their desk working. And I assume are there people wearing masks? Are they doing their social distancing or what's going on?
Very much so. So here's the boardroom where we hold the meetings, as you just mentioned. And then, pretty much everyone is wearing masks. They're doing a great job of following social distancing. And you can tell they're definitely ready to let the public in, and they're doing a great job of following orders. And
all right. That is a really cool tool you have there for your camera. That seems to be working out pretty well for you today.
Yeah, it is, definitely. It's very helpful.
All right, Erica, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. Yeah. Tyler, it seems like a story about nothing because there is no one there, but that is not true. Major accomplishment to get the building open again, get everything cleaned up, and that's going to be a big part of these buildings opening again is as the public comes in, all the extra effort to keep them clean. When you talked to Chris Darcy, who is the assistant to the township supervisor, I didn't ask you to ask, but did you? I mean, she must be dealing with the challenges and others there, keeping the building up to the cleanliness standards and wiping all the surfaces down. Are people practicing that yet now, or any conversation about that?
We didn't quite cover that in our conversation. It was very brief. I didn't want to disrupt anyone's work schedule, obviously, but I mean, I would assume so, because everything seems very clean. I've seen people go to the bathroom several times to wash their hands, and it really seems like people are committed to keeping this place, properly following restrictions and letting the public in as soon as they can.
All right, Erica, great job. We appreciate you checking in, and I know we'll check in with you again from some other location soon. So good talking to you.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, we wanted to get over there, Tyler, and it's not just in West Bloomfield. All the municipalities are beginning to open up, and they aren't opening to the public. I want to be very clear that I said West Bloomfield Township Hall is not open to the public. The staff is there. They're getting things ready. It takes time to get everything open back up.
Yes, and it took West Bloomfield several weeks to get that point. They started with just the elected staff that's normally there full time, the township supervisor, the clerk, the treasurer, then department heads, and then the department heads each individually made a decision of how to bring other people back into the offices before the entire township hall regular operations in terms of staffing return to normalcy.
All right, so can we ID our stations a little bit early and just move on with our agenda? Is that acceptable?
I think we're right about within time.
Okay, very good. So you are listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, and WAHS Auburn Hills, 89.5 Avondale Community Radio, now all appropriately identified for the FCC. Thank you for tuning in. Dave Scott at Civic Center TV, along with Tyler Keefe, and we are delighted now to be joined by the West Bloomfield Township Chief of Police, Chief Mike Patton. Chief Patton, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you, sir, for joining us via Zoom. So let me just start, just throw it to you for a minute and just give you an opportunity before I prejudice any of your comments. I know you saw the George Floyd video. I know you've seen all the coverage over the weekend. What are your thoughts?
I doubt there's an American, Dave, that wasn't not just concerned but disturbed by the video there. Of course, being a law enforcement officer for 35 years here in West Bloomfield, be quite frankly with you, it angered me. All the years of my law enforcement experience, that was very contrary to the missions of law enforcement and what we do here. And it wasn't just the manner and degree of force that was used, even though that was at minimum, criminally inappropriate. It was the deliberate indifference that I saw there, not only from the officers that were engaging the activity, but the ones that were also standing aside. All the times I've been involved in training here in our agency since my first couple of years here. And of course, since I've been chief for the last 10 years, we instill our officers that what their responsibilities and their duties are. They know that it's a tough job that they have. It's a crap-taking job. It's very difficult at times. But you treat people with respect and dignity on every contact that you have, whether it be a phone conversation, an in-person contact, or you're taking a police report. That's what our mission is here in law enforcement, and particularly at the West Bloomfield Police Department. And to do otherwise is completely unacceptable.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I'm just going to follow up on what you said. You mentioned not only the officer that was involved in holding down George Floyd, but the other officers. You want to talk a little bit more about that? They have not been charged yet, at least as of when I started the show today. Your thoughts there?
Well, again, this matter is still under investigation by the local authorities within that city and that state, and potentially by the federal authorities too. And we always have to keep in mind that part of our, what is great in America, that they all enjoy a presumption of innocence in what before they're found guilty, in a court of law. So as much as there's a lot of passion and obviously concern and anger, like I even admit to having anger about watching that incident, that they deserve presumption of innocence. But there's an indifference there. And at a minimum, could this incident had been minimized or prevented if one of those officers would have walked up and stopped the officer saying, "What are you doing? Stop it." And given him a timeout from what he was doing, because either he wasn't mindful what he was doing, or he was doing something that was just so wrong that he needed to be stopped. You wear a badge in our profession. You have a duty to intervene when you see other wrongfulness, either wrongfulness others from members of the public, but also wrongfulness or criminality by your partner members in law enforcement. And that's a requirement to wear a badge in our society, in our communities.
Well, and it's even a higher requirement than it ever has been, or at least we are more aware with everyone walking around with a camera and everything getting documented now. But going back again one more time, so you're talking about your years of training police officers. How would you train? I want to back up and say one more thing. This in no way is supporting the actions of that officer, but we have all seen officers in the line of duty that probably have a little bit of adrenaline going, and it's understandable. We're human beings. But that's where Officer 2, 3, or 4 can come in. How do you train officers for that situation? What do you tell them what to do and what not to do with regard to helping another officer who might be stepping over the line?
Well, that's part of it. Look, Dave, we're all human beings, and police officers are human beings too. Everyone in every profession at some point has a button that can be pushed. But it's incumbent upon all of us, not just the ones that are wearing the stripes, bars, and stars in law enforcement management, but among their peer officers. It's incumbent upon everybody to look at what their other officers are doing and let them know that's not okay. That's wrong. You're not only doing something wrong to harm another person, but you're hurting our profession, our agency, our community, and our nation.
So the other couple of incidents that I saw on television that I thought were interesting for our listeners here and instructive for our listeners here in Oakland County, West Bloomfield, and in Michigan. I don't know if you saw the video of the police officer in Detroit who there was a group of officers trying to maintain a perimeter and move some protesters back, and they were moving forward, as often happens. We saw that last night on TV, right in front of the White House when they were clearing the park. Officers, as part of their job, were trying to clear people back. But in the case in Detroit, we had a video circulating where there was one officer who kind of went ahead and started pushing real hard on somebody. I don't know if you saw that video. It's made the rounds. Are you familiar with the video I'm talking about?
I saw some headlines this morning. I haven't had a chance to really digest all the last night's news just yet. But let me make a general comment about what you're alluding to. Look, in every dynamic situation, every push and every shove doesn't give rise to a violation of rules or law or constitutionality. Those are dynamic situations. People are being directed to do things, and those are lawful orders, presumably given by the law enforcement officers. Officers are empowered to use force, reasonable force in situations, but not to shove somebody. You don't use force when it's not reasonable and required to do so. So if there's a way to get people to move without laying hands on them, that is always the preferred method to do.
Mike Patton, Chief of Police, West Bloomfield. Good to hear, and thank you for your honest interaction with us today to share that you were mad. Do you think a lot of police officers and people in your profession around the country are also mad?
I can almost guarantee that you are. I doubt you're going to see too many people that are going to try and defend the actions of the officers there. Look, we put our officers, it's a difficult job. Again, I've been doing it for many years. I've been fortunate to be the leader here of a great team of men and women for the last 10 years. So we give them a difficult job to do. We give them all the tools and the authority in order to do that job. And they know that there are clear boundaries that they have to adhere to. And when they go outside the boundaries of that responsibility, I mean, look at what's in our law enforcement code of ethics, where we're supposed to enforce the law courteously and appropriately, without fear or favor, malice or ill will. And that needs to be something that needs to be reminded to officers sometimes when they're under great stress, or that they look like they're going to lose their temper. And there's always training concerns and things like this, but I don't look at this as being a training concern, because we've had training, we've done training, we recurring do training. We spend a lot of time training, particularly here in West Bloomfield. That wasn't just training, a training oversight or leadership oversight. That's just an oversight of one human being not able to see that another human being was in distress and taking appropriate actions to correct it.
And then we would be remiss if we did not mention the story out of Genesee County and the sheriff in Genesee County, Chris Swanson, who was totally equipped in all of his protective gear and saw things getting a little bit ugly between the protesters and a potential for a conflict with his officers that were right there protecting a perimeter. And he did a very brave and, as it turned out, brilliant thing, moved forward, removed all of his protective gear, and engaged in some dialogue, then ended up with smiles and handshaking. Your thoughts?
Well, I give the sheriff there great credit for his leadership in his community and area of operations. Look, this is a time for, public safety and municipal and governmental leadership to stand up. To reaffirm what's right in our communities, to reaffirm what's right in our treatment of other individuals, even while we have to perform a very difficult job. And again, I think most leaders know their communities very well, but I give the sheriff a lot of credit there.
I think everybody is. He's getting national recognition for his bravery and his smarts, and that's what we need, smart, brave people to enforce and help us uphold the law. One of those, of course, is you, Chief Mike Patton, West Bloomfield Police Department. Thank you very much for joining us today. Let's talk about what's been going on. Now, I understand you probably had some late nights the last couple of days. We, other than in downtown Detroit, for the best of my knowledge, have not had widespread protests or problems here in Metro Detroit, but I'm sure you and your colleagues in all of the other communities in Oakland County have been working real hard. You want to talk about that?
Well, we've been monitoring. Obviously, we participate in different consortiums around Oakland County. Law enforcement in Oakland County here is, we communicate very well, amongst all the different agencies. So we all get along. There's not, turf rivalries or anything like that going on here in Oakland County. But so far, no incidents or issues here in West Bloomfield, but we are monitoring, areas of protest and or other issues where laws are being violated in other communities. And we're planning to address that if necessary here in West Bloomfield, but so far, no issues.
All right. Any other thoughts today other than, we could talk COVID-19, but your Deputy Kurt Lawson has been doing such a great job on that issue. I don't want to take away his turf, but anything else you want to share with us today that you might think
No, but there is a reminder on that, Dave, that, we are still in hopefully the tail end of an ongoing pandemic where people are putting at risk here. And we still need to be mindful of that. I saw Erica's brief story over in our town hall about all the protective measures they have taken over there. They have just been returning to work here, this week, in the last week or so. We obviously, police department, there have been, been no work from home days for the chief of police here for the last 3 months. We show up to work here every day and providing our services to the great West Bloomfield community that we're very fortunate and blessed to live and work in.
All right. Well, I salute you. Thank you very much. I know you've been busy. Thank you for your amazing work, and thank you for your comments and wisdom today. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Keep up great.
Thank you very much. He is Mike Patton, Chief of Police, West Bloomfield Police Department. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. It's the Megacast in West Bloomfield, but also all around Oakland County. And I just want to let you know, when we focus on one community at one time or focus on another community, so many of the themes and the information that we find really hold true across our entire service area. We're going to get another opinion on all matters COVID-19 and George Floyd in a couple of minutes when we talk to the mayor of the City of Pontiac. Deirdre Waterman will join us in a couple of minutes. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. It is the Megacast.
Coronavirus is deadly, but Michigan can fight back. Our front doors are the front lines of defense. Staying home is the best way to stop the spread. Because just one infected person can give it to 40, who can give it to countless more. So call Grandma, don't visit. Video chat, don't meet up. And if you must go out for food or medicine, keep at least 6 feet from others. Stay home, stay safe, stop the spread.
Technology like smartphones are wonderful devices to reduce social isolation in older adults. You can call grandchildren, phone friends, participate in fitness classes, and play games. But you need to stay mindful of scams. Scams related to the COVID-19 virus are rising. These include attempts to obtain personal information from seniors, including pitching unreliable products, advice, tests, and cures. You need to stay vigilant and be cautious. If you feel that you have been taken advantage of, it's okay for you to reach out to somebody you know and seek out advice, or even contact your medical provider. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Oakland County Executive Dave Coulter. Our top priority remains slowing the spread of COVID-19 in our communities. Please stay home, and when you must go out to an essential business, take precautions like social distancing and washing your hands when you come home. Because of the pandemic, we are behind in our response rate in Michigan. While you are home, please take a few minutes to fill out the census. It is more important than ever that we receive money back from our federal government. The census is Oakland Together.
More than 2/3 of those arrested in the city of Detroit over the past couple of days in the midst of the protesting and the problems we've had here at home, over 2/3 of those were not from Detroit. Over 2/3 of the people arrested not from Detroit. I'll read you the article in a moment from today's online edition of the Oakland Press and see where they were from. And we may not like the news here, by the way, in our area, but I will share that with you in just a couple of moments. Also, Mayor Deirdre Waterman of the City of Pontiac will be stopping in. I'm Dave Scott, Tyler Keefe in our Lakes FM studios. We are on 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 WBFH, the Biff in Bloomfield Hills and beyond, and WAHS 89.5. Avondale Community Radio. You can just kind of tune in the low end of your radio band up and down, and depending on where you're driving to and fro, you can probably tune in to one of our radio stations. Not like listening to WJR. You can't drive from here to Grand Rapids on one signal, but you can tune in across most of our area in one of the stations. You can also go to civiccentertv.com and tune in there online and many other outlets, thanks to our cable television channels as well. All right, briefly reading from today's edition of the Oakland Press. Headline, most arrested at Detroit protest are not from the city. Nearly 2/3 of the 60 people arrested Friday night during protests in Detroit over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis were from the city's predominantly white suburbs. This isn't going to be an easy pill to swallow, Tyler, for many of our listeners right now, but let's share the news. 37 of those taken into custody were from places like Warren, Farmington Hills, West Bloomfield, even Grand Blanc, which is about 60 miles northwest of Detroit, according to the chief of police of the city of Detroit, James Craig. Detroit was one of a number of U.S. cities where protests were staged, but didn't see the levels of violence, damage, or altercations with law enforcement that occurred elsewhere. And that is the really good news. In Detroit, the message given Saturday by Craig, Mayor Mike Duggan, and other two local activists was stay clear, stay home. And as you take a look at it from a Oakland County perspective, we haven't seen a lot of activity here in our backyard. We just talked to the chief of the West Bloomfield Police Department, but I guess it's no big surprise that people here that might have wanted to protest over this issue would go to the city to protest. I imagine, Tyler, there were a ton of people from Oakland County specifically that went to Detroit and represented those huge protests that were peaceful. People were sharing their message.
Yeah.
They were sharing the concern of anger, just as you heard from our chief of police in West Bloomfield over George Floyd, over his death, over the fact that he was pinned down for a protracted period of time, and over the additional fact that there were other law enforcement officers right there who might have been able to do something. I'll be stronger, who should have done something and didn't. And so there has been activity in our area. It just was transplanted to Detroit, and you take those numbers and you add to the segment of the population the number of jerks out there that want to go out and turn a peaceful protest into an opportunity to set fires and loot a store. There's going to be some of those too.
Yeah, I think there's honestly 3 different kinds of people that are going from outside these cities to these cities to protest. There's the people, and I know many of them, that are going there for the legitimate reason to join the protest. They agree with the protest's goals and what they're trying to accomplish and the conversation they're trying to start, and they're going there for legitimate and wholehearted reasons. 2, there are people that are going there for the sake of being there during the situation and experiencing it. And then there's 3, the people, like you said, the jerks that are going down there specifically to make trouble and to make a mockery of the situation, and make a mockery of the necessary conversation that the peaceful protesters are trying to start.
All right. Now I'm going to read the rest of this story, okay? And it isn't going to be comfortable, but that's okay, because it's not a time for comfort. It's a time for thoughtful analysis and consideration, right?
Yes.
Okay. So reading on in the Oakland Press story, which you might want to, in fact, not you might, I'm going to give you homework. Would you go read the darn article, please? Because it's interesting and it's helpful, and I think it will provoke some thought. And if we just got on the show today and said, hey, nothing happened in Oakland County, that wouldn't tell the whole story, okay? And this story here in the Oakland Press, good job, Oakland Press, continues to tell the whole story. So we're reading the quote from the police chief in Metro Detroit. The story, this is not a quote, story goes on to say, although Detroit is 80% black, many of those arrested were white. Now, that's complicated, I think, and that is probably only one piece of the story. I'm going to say it was absolutely only one piece of the story, because, Tyler, I saw people of all races involved in the protest, and this is not an exclusively a black experience, nor should it be. The offended parties here, definitely African Americans. If you're African American and you wake up, I get it. I'm a white guy, but I get it. Okay, you're thinking, well, this can happen to this guy, it can happen to me, and I and my community shouldn't be treated this way. But there's also another whole community of people that are not in the immediate community, that may be white or of one of a million other races, that say, well, this doesn't represent my thought or my feelings. So that's why I think we see a lot of people at these protests. Now, out of the entire community, some of the quote-unquote bad protesters are going to be black. Some of them are going to be white. Some of them are going to be on and on and on. So, but the story does provoke thought. So read it. Now here Dane McCraig goes a little further down the line, and I'm laughing because I laugh when I get stressed out. So I am not laughing at the situation. So here's what Craig said later, after, again, responding to the reporter who clearly noted that some of the people arrested in Detroit, and as a headline says, most arrested at Detroit protests are not from the city. The story goes on to say here, and I got to find the quote. This is Chief Craig speaking again now. We support the right to free speech. We support peaceful protests, Craig added. If you want to disrupt, stay home and disrupt in your own community. So I'm sure he didn't mean that. I think he would have preferred to say don't disrupt, but there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and clearly what happens in these protests here in Michigan and in any other part of the country, the way this has been going on, people have been going to city centers. That's where the protests have been happening. So here in Michigan, it's been Detroit it's been Grand Rapids. I don't think it's been Pontiac, though. We're going to talk to the Pontiac mayor in a couple of minutes and see how things have been going in Pontiac. And I haven't seen any reports that there was a big problem in Pontiac over the weekend. I know there was a big gathering on Sunday that I believe the mayor was probably at, and Dave Coulter, I know, was at, our county executive. And so we're going to find out about that. But that article, Tyler, where we'll put a link to it on our coronavirus page, even though it's not really a coronavirus story. But that article does get you thinking a little bit.
Oh, it's very thought-provoking, thinking about who was there, what they were there for, and being able to have that thought in your mind that comes from that is, well, if this is who was there and this is what happened, then what is this mix of people that are going down there, and how do we continue to support the peaceful protesters while preventing people from, in any way that's possible, from coming down there to make trouble, so that we can have this conversation the right way.
Yeah, and if you want any evidence of the right kind of protesting and the wrong kind of protesting, I thought there was some amazing reporting. There was some awful reporting. I mean, literally awful, disgusting reporting over the weekend. Pundits making political comments in the middle of this thing rather than reporting the news. And that was awful hard to swallow. But I thought it was fascinating, and I'm an observer of the media, and thank you for I have a little platform here, so take a minute. Because I like to help people try to make sense out of all this and what they're watching, and it's complicated now. You've got CNN and MSNBC saying this, and the New York Times saying that, and Fox News saying this, and what's right, what's wrong, whose perspective is the right one. You got to decide for yourself. But you're getting a lot of different opinion. It's not the day of Walter Cronkite coming on television, lowering his glasses and telling you about JFK getting shot. It's a different time. You've got a lot of different, not just opinion, but you've got a lot of different coverage with its own bias reporting the news. But I thought MSNBC did an amazing job last night reporting on what was going on in California. And they made it really, really clear. You could see these are the guys that are protesting. And then here's this excellent coverage of what it actually looks like when a store is just pillaged, and they had a reporter right in front of a store. The store gets broken into. And then there's the social media aspect of all this too, Tyler, because the store gets broken into. And then out of nowhere, all these people start coming in to loot the store. And they're coming in droves. And the police are down the road, and they're maintaining the peaceful protest that's going on down the road. And there's no one to address the issue for quite a while. And there's a lot of looting. And you just wonder, well, how do all these people know the store is open? Because there was no one in front. So you just think that there's got to be some social media network and all these people. And then you can wonder whether a lot of these bad protesters have been communicating via social media, and as has been alleged by the media over the weekend, that there is a real effort being orchestrated by some folks to organize and support these activities of the quote-unquote bad protesters. But MSNBC did a really nice job, and they were covering it. They were standing right at the store. They were reporting it. And you would think the cops were watching, because in about 10 minutes, and they probably were, and in about 10 minutes later, then you see the police come, and then they start making arrests. So I don't know if anyone else happened to see that coverage or tapes of it, but to me, it made it very clear, regardless of where you are politically, that and I think, Tyler, everyone, we can wrap this up here, but everyone today can say that safely, and you've heard everyone say it, that the way George Floyd was treated was maybe the worst thing we've ever seen in one of these police abuse cases. And it was absolutely awful, and nobody can justify it or support it, A. B, there are a lot of people out there that are protesting, rightfully so, in a very effective, peaceful way. And there are an awful lot of first responders that are doing their job in a very, very effective, peaceful way. And C, there's a whole other group of jerks out there that are just making this whole thing worse. And I guess I'll add D, and I'll throw it over to you and we'll move on. I think this whole thing is a little bit more challenging for America right now because of what we've been going through with COVID-19. People have been home. They've been pent up. I think some of the anger, and I think we're seeing it through the good protesters. The bad protesters are going to loot and steal, and rob anytime there's an opportunity, right? But I think a lot of the good protesters, maybe even more and more people, are a little bit more up in arms right now and a little more frustrated because of what our country is going through anyway.
I would think that too. Tensions are definitely high. People have been stuck at home, and people are angry about this just in general. George Floyd's not the first time that this has happened. It's certainly not the last time that this has happened, and it's not necessarily the most brutal version of this that's happened in the U.S. over the last several months by police and by people that aren't police as well. And I think the good that we're seeing is we're seeing that conversation start. And I think that we have to work to maintain that conversation and not let this fizzle out like it has the last several times we've reached this point or something similar to it. And to do that, we need to be continuing to show the good in this protest and the good in this debate, in this discussion, and work together, whether you're involved in the protests, whether you agree or not, whether you're a civilian or your first responder, or law enforcement, government, whatever you may be, to continue to facilitate a conversation, because that is the first step that we're taking here. And by not doing that, you're letting the bad protesters, so to speak, the people that are going to loot, the people that are going to steal, the people that are going to cause trouble, you're allowing them to have a bigger voice.
All right. If we were not covering what we're covering today, we would be saying to you and talking to you about the unemployment here in Michigan. It's gradually ticking down, and that makes sense as people return to work. We can only hope that the other good news of the day, that we are seeing more people, and I could throw out the numbers in the 30,000s, but it's a big number. Now we are accumulating more people that have been cured, that have survived, if you will, the COVID-19 attack that they faced. More and more people are recovering. So the numbers are good. They're moving in the right direction. So far here in the state of Michigan, we have not seen things get worse as things begin to open up, but it's very new in the process. So that's just a quick comment on that. We'll get back to more of that tomorrow, hopefully, if we begin to have quieter nights when we all go home. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you very much for joining us. Dave Scott, Tyler Keefe here on your local radio station. We're going to get back to NTV station and media outlet and internet outlet and social media outlet. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a minute. We hope to connect with the mayor of Pontiac, Mayor Deirdre Waterman, will join us in a couple of minutes. We'll get an update on how things are going in Pontiac as well on this Monday. We'll be back. It is the Megacast. We'll be back in a moment.
I know you're concerned about the coronavirus, and we're working hard to combat its spread and keep your family safe. But we need your help too. Wash your hands often with soap for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face and cough into your sleeve. Replace handshakes with an elbow bump. Avoid large crowds or events, and if you're sick, stay home and call your health provider. Every one of us can make a difference limiting the virus's spread and keeping Michigan healthy.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Khaldun. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19. Hi, I'm Dr. Jonay Khaldun. We know that COVID-19 is spreading rapidly across Michigan right now. The most important thing people can do to protect themselves is social distancing. That means unless you are a critical infrastructure worker or going out to get food or medicine for your home, you should be staying at home. Stay home, stay safe, save lives.
Good morning and welcome back to the Megacast. Dave Scott, Tyler Keefe, Erica Jones. We are all here today to bring you the latest on the coronavirus, COVID-19, and unfortunately to also report on the news of the day. And that today is, of course, the death of George Floyd and the reaction across our entire country and right here at home over the past couple of days. So we thank you for chiming in today and tuning in. And we are hopefully going to check in the next couple of minutes with the mayor of Pontiac. Mayor Deirdre Waterman will be joining us in a couple of minutes. Listen, so much happens on the show, Tyler, each and every day that we can't get it all to you in a package that would be easy to consume. So we take it all, break it into little pieces, and every interview, every discussion is on the internet and available for you to go back and look at. We're going to have a really interesting history of COVID-19 in Oakland County when this is all over. But certainly one of the really interesting stories and interviews from your show on Friday that I will be listening to when I get off the air today is Avondale Superintendent expresses frustration on the legislature's lack of prioritizing education. You want to talk about what that discussion was about?
Yeah, it was a lot about the impending budget issues. There's nothing official on that yet. They had their initial consensus revenue estimating conference that estimated about $600 per student in budget cuts that are oncoming for this school year, and about $650 for the next school year over. And Dr. Schwartz was talking about the issues that presents to his school district, to school districts in less fortunate situations, and just in general with the times that we're in, with coronavirus causing our schools to move to mostly virtual, and then the future very much looking like it's going to be a hybrid of in-person and virtual. The technology gap also factors into that. And without proper funding, you can't help your students who don't have access to the internet, who don't have a laptop, who don't have other devices to continue on with that hybrid education. And he definitely expressed frustration that there's not a lot of movement on that in terms of supporting the education system in a time of absolute need.
In addition, if you go to the website today, go to civiccentertv.com and go to our Megacast link. You'll see clips of previous interviews and then other things that relate that we were able to capture, including Governor Whitmer's comments on the situation in Minneapolis. So that's there and a whole lot more. So we invite you to go to Civic Center TV. It looks like you had Dave Coulter on Friday. Is that correct?
No, we did not.
Okay, so that's somebody just put his really wonderful comment about the Megacast at the top of our page. So I just see this headline, Dave Coulter says the Megacast is important. Well, thank you, County Executive.
It's a very true statement.
We appreciate that. While we are waiting for the mayor of Pontiac, hopefully she'll be connecting. My guess is she might be busy. Let's go through just a couple of other housekeeping things here while we have a couple of minutes. First of all, go to the website, civiccentertv.com. A couple of really helpful links. First of all, the coronavirus link. If you go there, the first thing you're going to find is links to all the different municipal resources all across our area and then across the state and federal government, CDC, Oakland County, your local municipality, state of Michigan. All the links there and a lot more helpful articles talking about the coronavirus. Then you can go to the Megacast link, and there you'll find out all the audio and video clips from the past several days. And in fact, if you keep digging through the archive, you're going to find every interview we've ever done. Someday, Tyler, I'll be sitting on my front porch in a rocking chair, just looking back at all these interviews we did during this interesting and challenging time. And then the link to the Carryout Club, which is our listing of area restaurants that are offering carryout. At some point, hopefully that won't really be necessary anymore because the restaurants will begin to open up, but they have not opened up yet, Tyler.
No, a lot of area restaurants are still putting the preparations in place. I mean, there's a lot of change that has to go on. You have to make those changes before you can open for your safety and for the safety of your customers.
Okay, we got another minute or two. We probably won't if the mayor gets in here at the end of the show. So let's take a moment to go through our COVID-19 vocabulary. We have not had time to get through the. Did you get through the vocabulary on Friday when I wasn't here?
We just kept moving and moving on Friday. We had no time for vocabulary.
No time. Okay, so the COVID-19 vocabulary, we originally set this up just to help you understand this complicated new language that we have. But as time went on, it became helpful and instructive to help us know what to do, the different practices that are important during this time to make sure we continue to lead a healthy and safe lifestyle and don't spread COVID-19. So with that in mind, let's take a moment and review the COVID-19 vocabulary. And one of the first terms that we came up here, Tyler, was flatten the curve.
That's taking a strong effort by the community to make sure that we're not spreading the virus exponentially, which becomes very, very dangerous.
Okay, physical distancing. It started out as social distancing, and then it became physical distancing.
Physical distancing is keeping at least a 6-foot distance away from other people to lessen the chance that you're spreading the virus to them or picking it up from them.
Fomite transmission.
A fomite is something like an object or a surface that you can touch and then pick up the virus on your hands or on devices or so on, and then you make contact with your face, your mouth, your eyes, and it's an easy way to contract COVID-19.
You know what I heard? I think it was another media outlet today, maybe one of our reporters. I heard that your glasses are an issue. I never thought about cleaning my glasses effectively, but I heard that you got to watch your glasses. And then the one thing that everyone in the office gives me a hard time about when I get off the air is the cell phone. They say, Dave, you're not doing a really good job cleaning your cell phone. How do you clean your cell phone, Tyler?
Just got to take some wipes and go over the outside area of it. Or take some disinfectant spray on a paper towel or something like that.
And you can do that on your phone and it won't hurt your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're soaking it in these disinfectants.
Well, some of those towels we have, those wipes here, get pretty.
If you get to the end of your now.
Have you noticed that you get down to the end of the wipes and they're like
soaked? It's soaked.
It's like
disinfectant.
It is. It's a pool. The Happy Birthday song.
Yeah, it's suggested that you sing the Happy Birthday song twice over while you're washing your hands. It'll get you at least 20 or more seconds of thorough hand washing.
Okay, and then asymptomatic.
If someone's asymptomatic, they may or may not be. They may be carrying the virus, but not showing physical symptoms.
All right, the pandemic.
Pandemic is a spread of a disease that goes worldwide. An epidemic is just in a certain area in a certain nation. A pandemic is spread across the world.
Okay, new normal.
That is a new conditions that we are living under in everyday life as a result of what we've experienced in the COVID-19 pandemic.
All right, something that was new. I don't think we'd ever seen before, but it became very popular. It started out as curbside testing, then it became like curbside almost everything.
Yeah, that is picking up food or getting tests in a drive-through method. So you drive up, you get a quick test, and you get a result in a couple of days at max.
Okay, abundance of caution.
If someone's doing something in an abundance of caution, they're taking as many possible precautions as they can take to prevent spreading COVID-19 from themselves to others or picking it up from another person.
Okay, stay-at-home order.
Stay-at-home order has been issued by many governors throughout the United States, ordering people that don't absolutely need to be leaving their homes for work or for essential services like groceries to stay home and away from others.
All right. The Megacast.
The Megacast is not just a regular broadcast or a podcast or a simulcast. It's something of a little bit of all of that encompassed into one with community outlets all throughout our area.
Okay. PPE. And I used to call it PPD, but I hear more people saying
it's
PPE.
Yeah, PPE is personal protective equipment. That's like a face mask, gloves, face shields, and so on.
What would PPD be then? Personal protection device, I think is
device,
what. Yeah, okay. Coronavirus, here's one you might not hear anywhere else. Coronavirus pandemic dreams.
Coronavirus pandemic dreams are odd or really weird dreams that you might be having due to overstimulus from all the stress that you are experiencing during this time, or understimulus because you're at home and you're not doing much.
I heard it was mainly understimulus.
That's what I've heard too.
Yeah, or it may just be a lack of sleep because we're working on programming the show and we don't have any time to sleep.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So then we have weird dreams. Okay, here's another one that came up from one of our guests. And one of our guests said, well, be really careful to use your non-dominant hand.
Yes,
Why?
you want to use your non-dominant hand to open doors, to pick up objects, and so on. It's because of fomite transmission. If you're using your dominant hand, you're touching surfaces, and then you scratch your face or you scratch your eyes or something, you're more likely to pass the disease on to yourself. Whereas if you're using your non-dominant hand, you're less likely to scratch your face with that hand, and and because of that, you're less likely to pass the disease on to yourself.
All right. Everyone wants to get tested. The really good thing about testing now, we're finding out that you do not need a prescription to get tested here in Oakland County. Go to one of our Oakland County test sites or go to one of the hospitals or a doctor of your choice, and anybody can get tested. You need to make an appointment, and they might do one of a couple of different tests. They might do the test that they used to shove way up your nose, and now they just can get you under the tongue a little bit. It's more accurate. And then the other test we now say is very accurate. They say at one point the other test was maybe 50% inaccurate, and that is antibody testing. What's that all about?
Antibody testing is testing to see if you have cells in your body that are working to actively fight off this strain of the coronavirus. If you have COVID-19 antibodies, you presumably had been infected with the virus, but were able to fight it off or are currently fighting it off strongly.
All right, another one that came out of one of our interviews, and boy, I'm telling you what, this is the big one right now. Everyone's wearing their mask, but a lot of people are engaging in facial covering displacement.
Well,
What's
that facial covering displacement is where you're wearing your mask, but you're doing it incorrectly. It's not covering your nose, or it's not entirely over your chin, or it's way too loose, and you're just not wearing it correctly.
Yeah, I saw that. All kinds of people over the weekend. They're wearing their mask, but it isn't covering their nose. Well, what's the point?
Yeah, I see a lot of no-nosers. That's what I see.
No-noses. And then, the one thing we could do, maybe you could tell Jeff or ask Jeff to book somebody on the show tomorrow. Probably the most useful advice we could get from somebody is how to keep your glasses from fogging up while you're wearing your mask. I mean, who would we get? Well, let's find a glasses expert. Maybe we can call one of the glasses physicians or stores.
It's possible.
Okay, COVID foot.
COVID foot, that one came into us from a caller. A lot of people, the gyms aren't open, you're out exercising, you're doing a lot of walking, and you walk so much that you start to have pain in your foot. And it's been known, I guess, as COVID foot.
All right, and then the last one on the list, unless you added any since I've been back, or before I got back, the coronavirus 1-2 punch. The coronavirus 1-2 punch.
Yeah, the coronavirus 1-2 punch is taking multiple steps to clean your surfaces to really get the coronavirus off of there and deactivate it. That's by first punch is using soap and water, and then when that is complete, you throw the second punch, which is using those disinfectant wipes or sprayings.
All right. Well, Tyler, it's clear that we have hit the big time with this show because other members of the media are filibustering our guests and making them impossible to come on our show at the scheduled time. We're waiting for Mayor Deirdre Waterman to conclude another interview, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to chat with her in just a couple of minutes. If not, we have some other alternative plans. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment. This is the Megacast. Dave Scott, Tyler Keefe. Want to take, as long as you got a second, take a quick moment to thank the Greater West Bloomfield Cable Communications Commission and the folks that make this whole broadcast possible. BAMA, Birmingham Area Municipal Access, and, of course, Civic Center TV, our two channels that are on Channel 15 and West Bloomfield, Orchard Lake, Kego Harbor, and Sylvan Lake, and then BAMA, Birmingham Area Municipal Access in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and Franklin. Our three great radio stations, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 WBFH, WAHS, 89.5 Avondale Community Radio. Thanks to the West Bloomfield Police Department and Fire Departments who have us on their Facebook Live today, and we're going to be back. She is now standing by. We'll get to her in about 30 to 60 seconds. The mayor of the City of Pontiac when we return.
The Centers for Disease Control and Oakland County Health Division encourages households to prepare for the possibility of a coronavirus outbreak in their community. Keep extra items in your house for an extended stay at home. Remember any special food items for babies, the elderly, and pets. Keep non-prescription drugs and other health supplies on hand, such as personal medications, at least 1 month supply, first aid kits, alcohol-based hand sanitizer, at least 60% alcohol, non-mercury thermometer, and get copies and maintain electronic versions of health records. Talk with family members about how they would be cared for if they got sick and what would be needed to care for them in your home. Learn about the plan at your child's school and your workplace. Discuss sick leave policies and/or telework options for workers who become ill. For more information, go to oakgov.com/health or call our Nurse on Call hotline at 1-800-848-5533.
We are hard at work each and every day to bring you, our good friends across Oakland County, all the latest information as it relates to the coronavirus or whatever else is making news, primarily coronavirus. And we thank you for tuning in on our great radio stations, municipal television outlets, and online. A ton of people have been tuning in online, and that is because we have a Facebook partner each and every day, and thousands of folks tune in to the show via Facebook. Today we're in the West Bloomfield Township Fire Department, I'm advised, and we thank them. Joining us now is the mayor of the City of Pontiac, Mayor Deirdre Waterman. And Mayor Waterman, before we get going, I understand you had a big celebration yesterday. It was your birthday. Tyler and I were going to sing happy birthday to you, but it wouldn't be. We don't want to lose all the audience right before you're right before we have you. But happy birthday, Mayor.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful sunny day and a good day in Pontiac. So thank you for that.
Well, good to have you. Complicated times. I thought it was complicated enough, and life just got more complicated here in our county, in the city of Pontiac, and our country after the terrible incident that we all witnessed on television and on YouTube and elsewhere with the police killing of George Floyd, and then the subsequent reaction by communities across the country. I just got off the phone with Chief Mike Patton of the West Bloomfield Police Department, and he just said he was mad, and I guess, if another law enforcement official says that, I guess it's understanding why all the rest of the country is mad today as well.
Yes.
You have any thoughts?
A lot of thoughts, a lot of things, and this has, over the week, I guess that we've been witness as a nation to these very unfortunate events in Minneapolis and what has ensued since then. And the original event has excited such outrage and such discontent in this population, and has sparked other kinds of activities, and now it's kind of morphed into something different. It's morphed into also a cultural explosion of also people who have joined in and said they are also discontent and unhappy and outraged by this inciting incident. But now there's all these other people who have joined in who are sympathetic to that, but also seeing that they have reasons to have unrest and to have anger and fear about the directions that certain cultural changes are happening in our country. And they're all kind of coming together, some in explosive ways, which we don't condone, of course, because we want this to happen in a dialogue that we hope that can be constructive. But there are destructive elements here. And while we don't condone that, I too, as an African American, as a person of a community of culture, of diversity, want to see constructive change. And it's gone on for a long time. And I guess it was this was the spark that ignited a flame that's happening as we are also trying to confront a pandemic and other cultural and social economic changes that are affecting every community and every citizen in this country. So this is a global phenomenon as well.
It seems to me, and I really want your perspective, because what your thoughts as an African American and a mayor, to me, are very helpful. But it seems to me that we are, as our country goes through more of these events, with police officers interacting and in this case killing an African American, that everyone can see on television didn't deserve that, and seeing other officers not stepping in to stop that activity,
Yes.
very painful to watch. But it also seems that, and I can understand, and I'm not an African American, but I'm mad, and I can understand how there would be a cumulative impact. It seems we keep having these incidents, we see them, and are people? Do you think people are getting frustrated that they're just, it isn't getting any better?
Very obviously frustrated. I mean, I think that's the sense that you feel. It's impossible to see that for most people, if you have a human sense, not have a visceral reaction to this. And for those people who have been aware of this, this has been 400 years. George Floyd is yet the latest, but this has been 400 years for so many people who have been confronted with this, and it has affected every Black man and Black family in this country. And so for people who are now waking up and to this latest incident, and nobody can see that without reacting to it and have a human sense. But for those, it's like this is yet another incident, yet another city that's traumatized, yet another family that's broken apart, yet another community that is torn apart at the seams. When does it stop? When does it stop? When do we make this change? It is something that we have to address as a country. And there are those who are now in the streets saying, hey, look, it's gone too long, and we're not going to step down until it is addressed.
Well, and it feels good to me to see that it's not just African Americans protesting. It's people of all races. We saw, African Americans, we saw white people, we saw Asians. I mean, it was a real mixed bag at what I call the peaceful protests. And just on that very briefly, I don't think that Dr. King would have approved of the activities that were going on at that Target store. We all know that, and there's no reason to dwell on that. I see you shaking your head, but does that frustrate you that that's still going on too?
It's frustrating, but it's in a sense, we, as I said, can't condone it, because what's destructive doesn't stop another incident from happening. All that does is to, I guess, for the people who feel that they have not been heard, they feel that this is the way that they have to be heard. So that's the fault of a culture that has not given these people a chance to be heard, and for a chance to see that there are definitive changes that are resulting from their voices. And so can't condone it, but certainly feel that same anger and frustration.
Mayor Waterman, the mayor of the city of Pontiac, disruption in Grand Rapids, significant protests in Flint, certainly a lot of activity in Detroit. I haven't seen any news reports. I was away on Sunday, but I haven't seen any news reports of any real problems, quote-unquote problems, in Pontiac. Can you give us an update of what's been going on in Pontiac?
Not problems, and I feel for my mayors who've had to deal with those kind of disruptive elements in their communities. But we did have what was started as a Pentecostal service celebration. And because of the recent events, which also needed to have voice, the pastors who organized that event said, well, let's turn this into a unity rally also, so we and Pontiac can also voice our concern and support for what we see is happening nationally. And so they came to me and asked me if we could do that on the steps of City Hall, and to give it that kind of expression for representing this community. So we did, and it was peaceful, it was organized, it was inspirational, it was joyful. It was also an expression of grief and mourning for what has happened, and also a sense of concern that we too feel the sense of outrage and the sense of frustration, but also the sense of we've got to find ways to stare this in the face, to speak it in its ugly name. It's racism. And this country has to deal with it. And we have to find changes, and we find that there are also people who have identified with this now. And as you say, a lot of the protesters there, not just Black families. They are families they're all kinds of people, young people who are disaffected, who can't get jobs, who see the economy changing, people who are disaffected with government, with the way they are not felt that they're being told constructive and truthful solutions by government now and see what's happening. So it kind of sparked, as I said, this incident has now sparked this whole cultural phenomenon where people are coming out and saying, we don't like the way that these issues that need to be handled with definitive ways, that we can feel satisfaction and feel that we're being heard and feeling that it's not, these same repetitive errors are being forced into people's, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I just hope it's not an important call from the police department or anything. But Mayor, if you got just one more second, and then we'll let you go. But, I think you said it really well. I mean, it's just like a piling on, and that's why it continues to get worse. And then add all of those stacks you just talked about, Mayor Deirdre Waterman of the City of Pontiac, the COVID-19, and the fact that we've been isolated. And you add one more thing, you just add that on top. Do you think that that's even been a contributing factor to the temperature of this whole situation?
Oh, absolutely. It's a frustration. The fact that we don't know what's normal anymore. There's so much uncertainty in the world. So many people don't know whether they're going to get their jobs back. Whole industries now that are being affected by this. Municipalities, all the mayors who are now on the ground trying to handle these things are not knowing how we're going to be affected by that for how long, or how we go back to now servicing our population, how we even bring them back to our city buildings again. So there's a lot of discontent, and it's time now to make sure that we have people who can be voices of constructive leadership, and bring back that for mayors who are trying to handle this on the ground every day. It's so important that we be able to bring back leadership that people can trust again.
All right, Mayor, I'm going to put you on the spot with one final question. You don't have to answer this one if you don't want to. You don't have to answer any of them, but this one in particular. Mayor of Minneapolis, good job, bad job, no comment, other comment. What do you think?
I want to say let me say this. Okay. In positions of leadership, there's a lot of intervening forces, and it's all local. But I would say this, one of the things I would try to emphasize in my community too, is that in the face of some rogue officers who obviously were deadly wrong, and there was no justice, and that's why this arrest has been served. But one of the things that should come out of this, hopefully, is right now to talk to the elements in your police department and say, from on high, and this has to come from the highest echelons of authority, this will not happen in this community again. And these are the changes we're going to make to make sure, and we can assure people there is a change. If people think there is no change and you're just placating them until the protests stop, then that doesn't solve the problem. But in my community, for example, I've had that conversation face to face with the sheriff, who provides the safety and security for this community. I've had that conversation, and I said, I will support you. I'm happy for what you have done for decreasing the level of violence in our community. And I will support you, and I know I will not fall for people who want to provoke you. But I do expect you to handle this with justice and fairness to all. And if that doesn't happen, then you will be accountable for that. All right. And that is very clear. And so I would like to think that is understood in our community. If there was a rogue officer or somebody that didn't control, that they would be accountable for that and take care of that. But I think we've had that understanding. And so in those communities where you have that, those aren't communities that have been the ones that have suffered these kinds of terrible incidents that just keep to be recurring. And so it's time now to address this. Not only this, but all the other facets of racism that have festered in our community. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just racism, it's now economic problems, and those are the things that people want to have real solutions for. And it's time now to really address that in a forthright way, in ways where we can do that across the table now, so people don't have to throw bricks through windows in order to think that they can get somebody to pay attention.
Mayor Waterman, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a difficult time to have this conversation, but very important, and we'll continue to have dialogue. And again, I look forward to meeting you in person when conditions arise, and we can do that. Thank you for being with us today.
Anytime.
And
Thank you for
best to everyone in Pontiac. And thank you for joining us. She is the mayor of the City of Pontiac, Mayor Deirdre Waterman. Great to have her with us today. Hey, we're out of time. We got to scoot along. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock all across Oakland County, right here on the Megacast.